Hello, how are you doing? I hope you're doing well. I know for Kenyans it's a bit tougher with the finance bill. Hold on in there. You'll be fine, okay? Hopefully my podcast should be able to get you through some couple of days and you find some other way of surviving through the rest. But I'm happy to have you here again. Welcome to another episode of the In All Honesty podcast. My fabulous name is Oliver Rao and I asked you, how has your evolution of thoughts around sex, sex work, hypergamy evolved over time? And that's what we're talking about today. But before we get to all that, I'd like to remind you that we have partnership opportunities on this podcast. If you would love to partner with me, I have all my contacts in the description. Please reach out. Let us talk business. And also I put out prompts every Thursday so that you know what we're talking about the next week, and therefore you can contribute and also interact with other people in the comments just to understand where people's minds are at with particular topics. But this week I asked you, how have your thoughts evolved about sex and sex work and hypergamy? Basically just things sex. And I'm going to start with the responses I got directly to my prompt. Someone said, difference is now most of them don't stand in the corner at the road, they are in relationships. I guess you mean sex work, but I feel like this is a very retrogressive thought of what sex work is about. So I think you don't necessarily understand what I mean by sex work or a sex worker. I feel like this opinion is rooted in morality. So I'll glide over it and move on to the next one. Someone else says, Wellington sent an ice cream. So there's this ASMR, I don't know, it's AI ASMR, whatever, trend that's going on TikTok, Instagram right now. People are going live and doing random things. So I was making fun of that, and that's what Wellington is basically saying. Someone else says, as a reformed Christian, let people feed themselves. Earth problems need earthly solutions. That is true. So I'm guessing with sex work, a lot of people look at sex work in terms of it is the last resort to solving a particular problem, and most of the time an income, so that you can get to eat, you can get to survive. So you're saying, will you pay rent? The finance bill is here. If selling your pum is what is going to bring in money, that's what you're going to do. Someone else says, it is still work and pleasure. Apart from the coin, I don't think much has changed. I don't know what you mean by coin. Do you mean more money? And you say it's work and pleasure. From what I've learned over time, sex work actually does not involve pleasure. Pleasure for the person who's actually getting the service. But for the person who's rendering the service, it's actually a job like any other. The same way I work in music, and a lot of people tell me, oh, it must be fun to work in the arts. When it becomes a normal job where there's ROI and where there's like reports to make and you have to justify things, there's not so much pleasure in it anymore. As much as I love music to death, when it becomes an actual job, it's an 8 to 5. Yeah, it becomes just that, a job. Someone else says, giving a man sex is going to keep him. Man, that was too ghetto. Younger me, I am sorry. This is one of the things that we were taught, and not taught per se, but we grew up hearing. So we had, when someone was divorced or when someone was left with their man, it was mostly, oh, there's something they were doing wrong. And it was hashed that that woman probably was not doing the most in bed. They were not pleasuring their man. You'd let yourself go. You're not sexy for your man. There was a lot of stigma around women just not satisfying their men, and that being the case for sex being reserved for the pleasure of men. But we are glad we grew out of it. Yeah, we know better now, because yes, girl, it was Someone else says, hustle ni hustle, juwe, things are thick. I don't judge harshly anyone. So you also consider sex work hustle. And again, I do not dispute this. A lot of us think of sex work as the last resort, as something that you need to do to make ends meet. And that is why we're thinking of it from the point of you gotta do what you gotta do. It's hustle, right? You have to get in the money. So we'll get to address whether you can actually do sex out of a choice, like the way you'd choose a career. I love engineering, I love media. Like, is that something that we also think about when it comes to sex work? Someone else says, never been one to judge. Not something I would do though. I lack skill, determination, and work ethics required. I have never seen a truer statement. A lot of us think, oh, you're a sex worker, or you're just selling sex. That's all. But if you were asked to prostitute today, do you think you have what it takes? Do you think you have what it takes to be an actual escort today? Do you think you have that? Well, a question to ponder upon. So when you think about sex, please understand that when you think about sex work, please understand that sex work is work too. And if you were given the opportunity, if you were told this is how to make your money, do you have what it takes? The same way a lot of people think, oh, the arts. I get to experience this a lot because of how I write. A lot of people come to me and they're like, just write something for me. It comes easy to you. You should be able to do it in a few minutes, right? At the end of the day, it's still work. When you approach me and tell me, write this for me, you know that I do charge for that. Yes, it comes easily to me, but then that's where I also get my daily bread, right? Someone else says, prostitution is just but a generational thing, if not witchcraft. It's horrible. Let's pray. That is coming deeply rooted from a religion, morality point of view, so I will not address that statement. Someone else says, poverty is the enemy. That's all for now. Thank you for your time. Thank you. I hear a lot of girls who've excelled in their life, and they usually use this statement and they say, poverty is the enemy. Let no one lie to you. Your neighbor is not your enemy. Someone from a different tribe is not your enemy. The only thing that separates us from other people who access privilege is poverty. So as long as you remember that in your head, poverty is the enemy. No one else is. Wherever you're doing, just make sure you're practicing everything within human ethics. But lack of money dehumanizes you. And that is an episode on its own that we'll talk about. Someone else says, if it is not your vagina, if they are safe and cognizant of their work context, why are you concerned? Exactly. Because we come from a culture, I think as Africans generally, we come from a very communal culture where one thing belongs to someone else. The child everyone in the neighborhood is responsible for particular children. So I think we extended that into this world where we're a bit more individualistic and people still feel like, whatever you're doing outside there is still my business. No, it's not. You should understand that it is actually not. Someone else said, the one thing I have appreciated in becoming an adult is the capacity to understand sex work. #no judgment. Yes, thank you. I think what I appreciate most, and I was just telling my friend the other day about being a grown-up, is how much I've grown in my mental space. I kept telling her that I have never had this much money or had this much access to opportunities ever before. I've never had this much awareness about myself and how systems work until now. So I really appreciate growing older because it gives me more insight into things that earlier on I never really understood. And I love this. This was, I think, my favorite statement in everything. Like, the beauty of being an adult is understanding things from a very clear perspective. Someone else said, I looked down on sex work when I was a good Christian girl, but since becoming into my beast non-binary queer era, I am always in the front line championing for sex work. Sex work is work. It deserves to be treated as such. It has nothing to do with morals. It is a service rendered. A lot of us came into this awakening later on in life when we started experiencing our very own sexualities. And then you realized, wait a minute, These people who we think are in the sex industry, or rather are in the sex industry, it's a job. And I keep saying that you cannot continue to supply where there's no demand. So sex in sex work is a supply catering to a particular demand. And when we look at it that way, then, as I have mentioned before, it is a job like any other. There's a capitalist system. There's literally dynamics in this system like you would have in an office. There's entry level, there's apprentice, there's someone working hybrid, there's someone working remotely, there's someone working in person. At the end of the day, sex work is sex. You need to start looking at it like that because it is a service rendered to supply a particular demand. Okay? And someone else says, I think one's choice of work should not bother people that won't feed, shelter, or sponsor her. Okay, that is true. Yeah. And this basically goes for a lot of things, not just sex work. If you are not the person feeding, sheltering, clothing this person, what they do should not really be passed under your morality lens. Mind your own business. That was a bang. I don't know what it was. I don't know what gunshots sound like. I don't know what a tire burst sounds like. It could be either. Anyway, someone else says, okay, I think one's choice of work should not bother people that won't feed them, shelter them, or sponsor them. Okay, yes. Another person says, after watching the movie Good Luck to You, Leo Grant, I have immense respect to sex workers. So let's all go get this movie. I checked out the trailer and it's pretty interesting. And after this, I'm actually going to look for it and watch it. And just to give you a lowdown, it's a man who's doing, I think, escort service. That's what I've gathered from the little things I've found on Google. But basically, there are some things that give you insight into a particular thing. And this has happened for me when I'm reading books and watching movies, where you get a particular insight and it completely changes your mentality about something. So I really love this for you. And thank you for the recommendation. So all of us are supposed to look for Good Luck to You, Leo Grant. That's a movie. Okay. Someone else says, my 2 cents, if there were more sex workers in Europe, we would have avoided 2 world wars. Let me tell you, there is no comment that triggered me like this one. And I will reserve this to have a panel come over and discuss this in a very safe, calm manner, because the role of women in wars is honestly traumatizing. It completely is traumatizing. And I'm not even ready to go into this, how women are used when it comes to wars generally. This was very triggering for me. And I will tell you, let me wait for it. Let me wait for it until I have a panel of people who can understand politics around sex, women, and wars. And then we can discuss it as an entire episode or probably a series, because this one is deep. Someone else says, I highly support sex work. Some people are really good at sex, so why shouldn't they monetize it? I felt like this was one of the refreshing responses, because a lot of times people address sex work as the last choice, the last resort. Like, it's when you're all hopeless. But this one shows you that now we are in a space where sex work is not necessarily just because you don't have a resort to. Sex work is now a normal job that you can pick like any other. And this has come with the evolution of things like OnlyFans. Like, we're now having sex digitally. Sex work this supply is catered to digitally. So right now we realize that there are people who actually just choose this. The way after school, you're like, okay, I'm gonna be a server at, I don't know, Chicken Inn. I'm going to start doing deliveries. It's a job like any other. I'm gonna open an OnlyFans account and send people foot pics and get money. Yeah, I like that now we're moving into a space where sex work is like some sort of choice, and it doesn't have to come from a traumatic point. Yeah, I hope I've I've explained my thoughts clearly on that. Someone else says, you really had to do that. I don't know what you mean I had to do that. I guess the SMRAI thing. I'll F prostitutes once in a while. It is contractual minus the feelings. Yeah, okay. I was happy to actually find a confession for people who actually get the services of sex workers. And I think I liked this. It was quite respectful. And what I just need to emphasize is I hope you are treating them with the respect that they deserve, because a lot of times sex workers don't get respect from the general public, including the people who go in for their services. It's sort of like they're second-class citizens. And I hate that. We'll discuss about that probably towards the end of this episode. Someone else says, I've always deeply admired sex workers. I think they know something the rest of us don't. I wouldn't say sex workers know something that we don't, but sex workers have realized something that the rest of us probably haven't gotten to a point of realizing. And that's why they're okay. Like this is a job that not so many people view in high regard, but I keep at it. I know what I'm gaining from it. So yes, there could be something they know that the rest of us just do not know. Someone else says, may God continue to bless them, especially those who do it professionally, to escape that phase. Again, I think this is another opinion or a response that's coming in from a religious point of view and from a morality stance. So again, I will not address it. Someone else says, necessity of life. We are social animals and sex is currency. Have you seen Big Brother Nigeria? All the girls there are BMs. I don't know what BM is. I've tried looking it up. I try to understand. I haven't watched Big Brother Nigeria, although I know the concept behind it. And yes, we are social animals. It's a necessity of life, and sex is a currency. That is very accurate, and nothing truer has been said. Sex is actually a currency. It's the only other currency I know apart from money. Someone else says, society often judges people for sinning differently. Honestly, people sell whatever they have. I guess the use of sin again comes from a religious point of view for me. So when you say sin, what do you mean? Because it's coming from an opinion of someone who's looking at it from a morality stance. With that, I will not address that comment again. Also, someone else says 100% support that sector. Do you support sex? Do you support hypergamy? Do you support sex work? I do not know, but 100% you're supporting, and we are here for it. Someone else says we are all whores, only that we sell different parts of ourselves. This is very true. And this is a statement that we take around all the time. When people try to judge a sex worker, I'm just like, but you're here slaving for 8 hours, sometimes even more hours without an afterpay. And you think your corporate job is better than a sex worker. You're selling a part of you. It could be mental. It could be your heart. It could be your skill. It could be your talent. We are all selling something. You just have to choose which one. Someone else says, if it pays the bills and you are good with what you do, girl or boy, do you. Yeah, that's with everything. Everything you do in this world, so long as it pays your bills, please understand that I will always emphasize within human ethics, because I do not stand for stepping over people to get what you want, even if you should be aggressive. Okay. So with this, before I go to like the slightly longer comments, I'd like to remind you that because sex is a very sensitive topic, that's why I'm gliding over the opinions that are quite religiously and morality based, because I feel like we cannot have a quality argument if one of us is coming from that stance. We have to come in as an open book and have these discussions with open minds. We cannot come in already standing on a particular stance with morality and especially religion. We cannot, I can't even start addressing religion at this point because we don't even share a religion to begin with. So it will be unfair for me to sit here and start discussing all these topics that are quite sensitive from the basis of religion. So that is why I'm gliding over topics that are over responses that are based in religiosity and morality. Okay, that understood. A slightly longer answer I got from someone here who told me, hide my ID. I'm usually posting your episodes on my socials. And if any of my viewers came here, well, don't worry. We don't tell anyone's identity here. Anyway, so this person tells me, currently a campus student, asexual, if I may say, but honestly, I don't mind flirting around for petty cash or fancy dates. If I was interested sexually, I also wouldn't mind having sex with them. Because people are still getting fucked by trashy men who give nothing but trouble left, right, and center. Isn't it better if at least you get something in return? Anyway, I used to have reservations about older married men, but right now I really don't care. The biggest risk is at least try not to get killed. You know how it gets when young girls are involved with the big-pocketed men, especially politicians. Then things go south for them. Anyway, I really look forward to your episodes. You're very much part of my feminist awakening era. I love that. We are here for feminism and healthy feminism. Well, at that, not toxic. Okay? Because I know that third wave feminism is the loudest, the hate men, and probably it's very extremist, but I love it for you. I hope you get to learn feminism from a very healthy stance. Okay? So you say you're in campus. You are probably asexual. Yeah, you could be, but with time you learn your sexuality, and also sexuality changes. Someone can move from hypersexual to asexual, from asexual to hypersexual. With time you learn and you go with the flow. You also say you used to be very reserved about like dating or like involving older married men, but now you really just don't care. Because also this argument, I understand where you're coming from, because if we talk about morality, then where does the morality of the man who's cheating on his wife stand when he's coming to pursue like younger girls? So morality is very relative when we look at it from that point. And also you say you just don't mind doing a few flirtations here and there, just so long as you get like a small, like nice treats, you get money here. Because at the end of the day, all of us are doing it, but some of us are doing it for free. And some of us are doing it and get paid by trouble, by the way, because character development is a bit. Yeah, I think this is like really woke. If you're still in campus, you must be very young. And this is what I appreciate about the Gen Z. I feel like they're very progressive in their thought process, because this is a thought process that I have just probably settled in my late 20s, probably early 30s. But this is someone probably in their early 20s who's already thinking like this. They're just like, I need to stay safe. I just need to I need to be secure. I'm interacting with this high influential people. I need to know how to take care of my security. I need to know when to shut up, what to do, what to say, how to say it, NDAs. Yeah, so you are staying safe. I like that you're smart. I love that. Someone else tells me, let me just scroll here. Here it gets juicy. The slightly longer ones, it gets really, really juicy. Someone else says, then I thought, how can she? It was never a he. About a shower. Now a shower till kingdom come. Make ends meet, baby girl or boy. Sin is sin. We all sin differently. Again, the aspect of sin is very morality for me on this topic, so I tend not to address sex work or sex as sin. But you're saying we always thought, how can she? No one ever thought, what about this guy? What about this guy? And you're talking about this Ashawo lifestyle. So Ashawo is basically, I don't know where it came from. It's from Nigeria, and it means like prostitute, I think, lady of the night. But this Ashawo lifestyle It's basically something we judged women harshly about. But would a shower lifestyle exist without someone demanding for it to exist? It serves supply to a particular demand. And that demand was mostly men. So now you're just like, a shower for life. Baby girl, a shower, please. A shower in peace. Someone else says, hello. Okay, this is my 2 cents about sex work. If a woman loves this type of work and craves it in her soul, then she should pursue it as a career. However, it becomes the only alternative to get out of poverty, or if someone is forced into it, either by family members or worst case scenario via sex trafficking. Then I have a problem with it. I love this. It's very wholesome. You say that if you get into sex work as something you like, you see the way right now we have the opportunity, like you're open an OnlyFans and start sex working. It's okay. You can get into the socialite industry. You can be an escort, a high-class escort. It's something that you can do out of choice. It becomes a problem when it's the last resort. Like you're coming from a very poor background and you need to afford pads and food. And at that point, then you have to have sex to get these things that are genuinely just basic human needs. And at that point, it gets sad. Some people get into sex work through sex trafficking. And sex trafficking, girls are trafficked when they are very young. So you find yourself in that life without choosing to. So that's something that is heartbreaking, heart-wrenching, if anything. We'll talk about the dynamics of sex work and sex trafficking in Africa, let's say. But that is, I think that can be a whole series. I don't think we'll even sit down and do an episode for that one. Someone else says, as an ex-moral police, hello there, tunajuana kwa vilemba, sex work or sex for money is just good as any other job. But for real, after dating for so many years and accepting the bare minimum just because I don't make demands or requests, I envy the girlies who have transactional sex, the boldness and the self-awareness. Yeah, I think it's for girls who started having sex earlier for like as a transaction to gain something from it, we really admire you, because us, we are out here doing the most for nothing. And as you say, I think I agree with the first slightly longer comment we read. It's work at the end of the day. You're gonna get bare minimum for the same thing. So here is the thing I keep saying, that there's a girl who said on TikTok that I dated men and I asked for nothing. I was being low maintenance. I asked for nothing. I was easy to be with. But even when I asked for nothing, I still received less. So keep that in mind. You will ask for nothing and you will still receive less. Someone else says, hi, Olive. Hope you are well. It's me again. So I used to perceive sex work and prostitution like the worstest sin. Yani zile za, how can someone engage in such a thing? Kwani mtu hajiheshimu, etc. Now, as an adult, knowing people who actually get into relationships and pretend they are in love just because they don't have the luxury to wait for their perfect partner. Maybe someone has lost their job, has no parents, estranged extended family with siblings, depending on them, etc. I mean, listening to the stories of sex workers and hearing circumstances that led them there, don't even get me started on whatever they go through in these streets just because people don't respect their type of work. Anyway, right now, I just be like, you do what you gotta do. Whatever imefikisha mtu hapo mi sijui. Like, we are not all the same and our circumstances are very different, so no judgment here. Sijui kama I've gotten carried away na kutetea, but hope I've answered the question. Thank you very much. No, you didn't get carried away. I think this was quite articulate. Yes, from where we are right now, how we understand sex, it was a last resort to people who didn't have a means to an end. And so when you hear the stories are just full of trauma. And let me tell you, them exchanging sex for money is probably the least worst experience they've had. And as you've heard, she's also interacted with people who are in sex work. And this is very common. They get treated badly by their customers and by people generally. And it's horrible. And this is why I feel like sex work should probably be legalized so that it is also regulated. And let me tell you guys, morality. If sex work is legalized, that means it can be taxed. That means it can be regulated. And that also means that the sex workers can be assured of security. They can also go and report assault and they will not be stigmatized for that. They also can have access to healthcare, good access to healthcare, because there's no stigma around it. They also can invest in things. You can go and actually say, I am an escort. I earn this much per month. I want to invest in this and that. So at the end of the day, it is work, and I feel like we should evolve into a space where there's respect for sex workers, because right now they're treated like second-class citizens and they're honestly human. And people who do that, you're just a horrible person. Someone else says, I used to judge them harshly, by the way. I was always like, can't they start another biz, like at a grocery kibanda? Until I grew up, life ikanigonga to a point of almost starting it. Though I never did, but I stopped judging them. Also, I've realized we sometimes practice prostitution when we are in relationships with people we don't love, just so we could get money. Them baba things also qualifies as sex work. So nowadays, I don't judge. Maybe we've all done it. So si lazima usimame hapo kwa barabara. Si lazima usimame hapo kwa barabara usiku to qualify. I only hope they take precautions like kina PrEP and the likes. They should introduce lips condoms for... They should introduce lips condoms for not kissing, for kissing, because I hate kissing people and I'd used to. Okay, so they should introduce lips condom because you hate kissing people, then just don't kiss people. Anyway, you're saying you really don't judge. All of us came from a point of judging because this was something that was really shamed. And let me tell you, not even sex work. Sex work is like up there. Sex itself was shamed. So we're not even getting to sex work. So for us African people, that was a place we don't even go to. Someone else says, sex work personally never gave it a thought, other than when growing up, we knew it was a sin and wrong. But now, honestly, some are looking for ways to take care of their families. So who are we to judge? See, hata Jesus didn't shame the prostitute. I actually see it as a demand and supply business. Si kuna demand, sa mbona watu wakose kusupply. If I never found love and married for love, maybe I would be married for money. See, we all want to be baby girls and have our baby girl era treatment. So that being that, in all honesty, if I had the body that sells, juhini biz basically, I would be in OnlyFans. I would be selling it because at the end of the day, if selling isn't affecting you mentally, see, then you get the money, baby girl. We should just normalize prostitutes. You should just normalize. Prostitutes saw an opportunity and just like a clever business person jumped on the opportunity. Already feels like this was to be a Dear Olive letter. Oh, well, in kind regards, thank you for your podcast. So you're basically just supporting again the sex work community. If we had it legalized, then it would be easily regulated. And you also reiterate on my point. It is a supply for a particular demand. Sex work would not exist if no one was demanding for sex. So it's easy like that. Someone else says, thank you for finding me on the ground live. And I believe you two are doing great. I will venture into prostitution and how the society looks at it. Call me whatever you want, but mostly ladies do promote sex work like no one's business. The society is okay with ladies doing prostitution, and the same society will call a man names if seen doing so. Have you ever seen a male prostitute? well, I have. Still on sex, but this time rape. A man can be raped and no action can be taken. You try with the daughters of Jezebel and back to you in studio. So I actually replied to you and told you that I will not address rape when we are talking about sex because sex is consensual and rape is not. So those two things are completely mutually exclusive. So that's why I'll not address the second part of your statement, but we'll get into, yes, I have seen male escorts. It's quite common now. It's not I don't know. For men, it's sort of praised. It's like, oh, you're attending to all these women. You're giving them what they didn't have because women are out here thinking that they can have it all, but then they need men. So for men, I still think like even men in sex work are still getting praised for it. Although there's some stigma where people being in Africa, we believe men should be the providers. And so if you see a man doing an escort business where he's getting paid by women, there's also some stigma around that. But I'm totally confused about this. But you're saying you're going to venture into prostitution. We'd love to hear your story once you start. Tell us about it. Tell us how it's going. Give us tips for people who would like to go into that industry. Someone else says, hey, Olive, let me get right into it. There's this YouTube channel called Jubilee. They were finding middle ground for sex workers and virgins. I learned a lot from that episode. Like sex work is a sort of gender biased, and that's one area of work that women are dominating, and it's a calling to some people. Expanding on that, I now hold a belief that sex work is a calling, and one of the possible signs is a high sex drive. But don't take my word for it. My take is sex work should be legalized if it's not, and people should heal their perception on sex to get through this. Sex is a need, and it takes skill to master it, just like any other profession. I really didn't have an opinion on sex work before and have no specific reason for not having one. Finally, loving the consistency. I'm excited for your future. Thank you very much. I appreciate your kind sentiments. And you're saying, again, reiterated this point, sex should be legalized. The social experiments you're talking about on Jubilee, I really follow that YouTube channel, and it's helped me put some insight into a lot of things that are very controversial. And sex and sex work has been problematic. In the African community, it has been problematic. As I've said, we stigmatized sex, and therefore sex work was even out of question completely. And even when I was putting out my prompt, I said, it is the oldest profession in the book. Surely, by now, we should start understanding it and respecting it. And by now, we're starting to understand that it is actually catering to a supply to a demand. If you really have a problem with sex workers, then go and get who is demanding for this service. That's where you start. You cut it from the roots. So I'd really like to thank you for this contribution. You also brought up a very interesting point that sex work is dominated by women and not men so much. And that is because that's how it was set up. And even looking into the African traditional marriage setup, I feel like it was a lot hypergamist sort of like sex related benefits, so I was to marry you off to this man. The man had to be wealthy in some sort of way, cows or whatever way they showed wealth, and you were supposed to go into that home and take care of the household and give this man and have sex with this man in return for what? Protection, providence. Yeah, if you see, a lot of things were based on that, like that dynamic. And I'm also trying to think. Yeah, when you talk about anyway, this again we'll discuss in the sex episode where we are talking about how sex women affected was, or rather the role that women played when it comes to things like wars, because it's not funny. Someone else says, I no longer judge them because they might be happier than most married women in church. This is personal. First you went for the married women and then the ones in church, to be specific. So yeah, you really can't judge. We really don't know. I don't know why you made a very specific comparison to married women in church, but yeah. Anyway, whoever is happy is happy. Someone else says, hello, Olive. Someone used to judge and ridicule prostitutes. Ha ha, shame on you. How evil prostitution is, how prostitutes will go to hell. See your life now, sleeping with your boyfriend because he bought you chicken and chips. That is still prostitution, baby girl. Hell ni moja. Say hello to Future Ma Olive. Future Ma Olive is becoming a celebrity over here. But anyway, you've been bought chicken and chips and you're giving it away. Someone else is giving it away for a mansion. Someone else is giving it away for 100K. So you say that we are all prostitutes in some way. I don't deny it. I'm not affirming it. I'm just saying this is funny. And probably I agree. Someone else says, I have a long relationship with sex. Let's just say that I'm very aware of my sexuality and needs. I can be domineering, but love to be subdued. I know what parts of my body I like bit. I know what I like and I can tell my partners what I like. I can easily give direction without them feeling off. Yes, I have multiple partners. Did I mention that I love sex? I am not a sex worker, but a sex coach. Love coaching and educating people on sex on my podcast and page. I could be a sex worker or escort if I wanted to. The thought has crossed my mind on several occasions. I want to be a sex surrogate though. Google it. I want to make people reach orgasms to their full potential. Everyone deserves a good orgasm. They call me Lady of Kinks and Whips for a reason. Climax with Shiro is my name. I got this sexual awakening after I left an 8-year marriage. I felt liberated and free. I could finally do what I wanted without getting judged. I have multiple partners now. I love the freedom to choose who to be with depending on my needs. Person A brings something different from person B, etc. Yes, they know that I have other people. It's not a relationship, it's sex. They fulfill my sexual needs and desires. They pleasure me differently. I can easily tell them what I want. I'm in my adventurous life. I want to explore my sexual fantasies. All things considered, my sexual health is my priority. I remember watching She's Gotta Have It, a series on sexual liberation, and I was like, this needs to be me. Here we are now. Very wholesome. 8-year marriage and then got into your sex liberation era. Man, you're probably having you've tasted the entire spectrum, like you know the entire thing, and you seem to know exactly what you want, which is what we are hoping for when it comes to this sex liberalization around sex, right? That's what we're looking for. We're looking for people to be open in communication. She says she has multiple partners, and all these partners know that you're not the only one, because we're not here for a relationship. We're here for sex. And I'll tell you what I want so that I am pleased and I have my orgasms. And you too, I do my best and make sure that you also can communicate and feel safe in this space, and you too get to have pleasure during this experience, which is honestly very beautiful to me. And I love this for you, Climax with Shiro. So I guess she has a podcast. Okay, she does. She has a podcast and a page where she does sex coaching. And when she said sex surrogate, if I remember it right. So a sex surrogate is someone who is in the room when you are having sex, and they literally coach you. They physically coach you how to have sex, or how to pleasure your partner, or how your partner can pleasure you. Literally, they're in the room when you're doing the act. Yeah, if I remember right, that's the sex surrogate thing. This is someone else who says, this one is long, but we'll get through it. I am the master. So this is on a hypergamy. I'm the master of clownery in relationships, funding grown men's lives. I can't date a man who's on the same level as me. He must be of a higher status. This is because I wanted to be treated well. A man who attends to my needs emotionally and financially. Before you say no and disagree with me, that such men exist, I assure you. They exist. Money attracts money. In this endeavor of dating men with money or being given baby girl treatment, even by the lesser, I make sure that I look like money. I change how I dress, walk, speak, and bought expensive hair and outfits. I even learned my makeup. When I step out, I smell, look, breathe money, elegance, and class, sophistication. I've had my experience not too long ago. I dated a man who was of a higher financial class. We met at an event and I had dressed the part. I looked like a lady who knew what she wanted. Before approaching me, one would stutter and check themselves first. That set the pace of how he'd treat me, and he went above and beyond. He took me to lavish places for dates, places I'd mentioned. He'd pick me and drop me home or get me an Uber and make sure that I shared my ride with him. He'd even tip the drivers. Our first night was spent in one of the hotels in Nairobi. He spent a pretty penny. He made sure that I had expensive drinks, my fave food and snacks when I spent the night at his place. We were supposed to go to Maldives for a vacation before we broke up. It didn't work out, but he set the pace of the kind of standards I want from a man. I still look lavish and elegant. When a man approaches me, he knows that he must meet me at my level or exit the building. I've had men who can't quite afford me, but they try. Really, they do try. I'm baby girl and they are scared of disappointing me. Just to add, I can easily afford the lifestyle that these men provide. If it's an Uber or a date, I can easily pay for it if things go south. A man who can't afford me shouldn't approach me. If you can't organize my transport and accommodate my comfort when we are meeting, then don't bother. Take a step back. There are women who can appreciate the small treats, but I know that I won't appreciate your small treats. I won't marry or seriously date someone who doesn't have money or ambition. You must be smart, have money and ambition. I've clowned enough before. Never ever will I ever be a basic for nobody. Okay. Hypergamy at its finest. So what I think has always made me very lazy about hypergamy, or just like trying to attract people with money, is how much investment goes into how you're supposed to look for you to attract these people. You have to make your hair, makeup, invest in makeup, dressing, shoes, like looks, scents, all of that. And honestly, I am lazy, and to see the amount of work you've put just to attract the kind of person that you want, I really appreciate that. And this is something that hypergamists are able to understand. If you're not a hypergamist, please don't come here and start hating. There is someone who's willing to only date people who have money, and they know. And I think before in the responses, we've seen one person saying poverty is the enemy. It really is. Because most people have had life without money, and then they've had life with money. And honestly, life with money is better. That you cannot be convinced otherwise. Money affords you so much humanity. Money affords you, as I said, poverty is dehumanizing. There are things you can't afford when you don't have money. There are things that are just, let me tell you. Get money. If you're a hypergamist, invest in that life. And I guess what? Sprinkle. So generally my thoughts before I clear up on this topic on sex work, and hypergamy, I'll start with sex. I was a good girl. I thought virginity should be reserved. Even when I was a good girl, I didn't think virginity should be for your husband. I used to think virginity should be reserved for the person you're dating seriously. That hasn't changed much. Of course, I've gone through my ups and downs of just trying to learn my sexuality, trying to learn the kind of people I'm attracted to. But I think right now I've settled in that space again, where I'm just like, casual sex is too much work. If I'm going to have sex with someone, then I'd want it to be at least an exclusive exclusively dating setup for me right now, just because I'm lazy. I'm not ready for the waking up, running around, having sex, trying to figure out the dynamics. For me, I just want it to be comfortable and to be clear, and there's rules of engagement, and we just know we are exclusive and we're dating. And for me, that then is the safest space for me for then having sex. And over time, I've actually learned that I am asexual. This is something I learned very recently. So then it explained my entire history with sex. There was this one thing that I experienced when I started having sex, which was guilt from having sex with more than one person. So after I broke up with my first boyfriend, who basically broke my virginity, after that, I remember feeling a feeling of guilt every time I had to date someone. Even sometimes just making out with someone, it almost felt like you're cheating on someone who you already broke up with even years ago. So I think that was around how we as women were groomed growing up. We as girls were groomed. Growing up, we were supposed to be these perfect sex objects for men. They were supposed to find us pure and chaste, and they were the ones who were supposed to now teach us everything. So I found myself feeling guilty, but I'm so happy for sexual liberation that now I'm not in that space anymore. I have also quite emphasized on having sex with people who you like, because it completely changes the dynamic. I am honestly struggling with having sex with people I do not like, and that is why it's been very difficult for me to even explore the spaces of hypergamy. I don't see how I can have sex with you if genuinely you're not my person. You're not the person I'll wake up to and cuddle in the morning. I genuinely just want to feel that very safe space for me. And over time, sex has now come to a place where you have seen in the last two responses I've gotten, now both people should enjoy sex. We now have come to a space where we realize even women should be getting orgasms. Even women should be pleasured in some way. People should communicate how they like to be pleasured. Growing up Christian and very reserved, sex was reserved for procreation. So you are not supposed to derive other forms of pleasure from sex. It was just for procreation. And now we know better. And with the sexual awakening means appreciating sexual enthusiasts, sex enthusiasts, and also appreciating those who are not exactly interested in sex. Because I realized once we started the liberation journey of sex, we got to a point where now we were really hyping hypersexuals, and it got to a point where asexual people, or rather virgins, were being now ridiculed, which really doesn't make sense, because I don't know. It should be all inclusive. If you're the kind of person who's literally sex liberated, you should be able to respect people who don't want to have sex and people who do want to have sex. So because I've seen a lot of disrespect around celibacy, I am involuntarily celibate because I chose my peace, and I chose it so fiercely that I realized my bar for who I'll have in my life is very high. So in that sense, I went into celibacy without planning to go into celibacy. But there I've learned there's a lot of disrespect where people learn about your celibacy and they go, oh, I can change that for you. Oh, why? It's as if celibacy is some sort of problem. It's like you're dealing with some trauma. No, you're not. You just don't think about it. Some of us just don't think about sex like that. It's not something that crosses our mind, okay? A lot of people think, oh, if you're not having sex, then you must be masturbating. No, there are people who just don't think about sex. Learn about it. There's a whole spectrum when it comes to sex. So there are people who are up there thinking about sex every day. There's sex addicts. There's people who literally don't think about sex. There's people who sex disgusts. There are people who try and have sex when they feel like it. There's a whole spectrum. Learn about it. Respect different people at whatever stages they're in. When it comes to sex work, I have shared these points before. Sex work is a capitalist system, just like any other job. Sex work is sex. There's entry level, there's apprentice, there's people working remotely, there's someone who's working hybrid. Sex is work. Sex work is work. It's set up. There are people who are earning more than others. There are people who are set up in like consultancy. There are people who are employed, like the people who have pimps. Sex work is a capitalist system like the corporate system. It's serving in a capitalist dynamic. So understand that sex work at the end of the day is sex and is work, sorry. And it serves, I will repeat, sex work serves a demand. It is a supply to a demand. And that is exactly the definition of a business. So it makes it work. So another thing that we are looking at here when it comes to sex work, it looks like sex work is a resort to, it's a last resort to having a means to an end. After you have nothing and you're just like, yo, this is all I have. It's how I can make money. And you find yourself in it. But I would like us to evolve into a space where sex is a choice. That we are not there because of where life has pushed us. That we have access to things. We have access to, I don't know, the things, basically food, shelter, education, the things that push people to go look for this money in sex work. Because we know if you're getting into sex work, when it's not a choice, it's just your last resort, you're not getting into it in a healthy mental space. You're not getting into it happy to do this. It's a very traumatic experience for you. This is the only thing you had left to do for you to survive. It's like getting stuck in a desert and then you have to get to the point where you have to drink your own urine. It is so dehumanizing at that point. So if we can evolve to a place where sex work is actually considered work. I've said if it could get legalized, then it could get regulated. That way it could get taxed. Then sex workers can also access other benefits that other people working in any other business can also access. And a lot of it is security. Because something that I think the African people generally should change in their mindset about sex work is that sex workers, you're not entitled to sex workers' bodies, time, space, because it feels like so long as someone has presented in a certain way, you don't even have to be a sex worker. You just have to be probably liberated. And you find that people approach you feeling entitled to your body. Just the same way you get into work at 9, you clock out at 5, and from 5, you're not even answering calls from work. Why do you want to disrespect a sex worker's time? Why do you feel like because they do this kind of job, then I'm entitled to touching them, I'm entitled to being with them, I'm entitled to, no, they also clocked out. If you want their services, go when they are, go during their operating hours and pay your dues and go your way. So I think we also need to establish the respect around sex workers a lot, because right now sex workers are completely dehumanized. They're treated like second-class humans, and that is not right. They are humans and they're actually supplying to your demand. So I don't know where all this disrespect is coming from, but that is something we need to change in the African culture. And when it comes to sex work, I'll also tell you, African men, or rather just men generally, prostitute is not an insult anymore. Women already reclaimed that word. Women are living their best life. They're having their orgasms. If you think sitting there and calling a woman whore is something that, it just shows how shallow you are. It just shows how retrogressive your thought process is. So just understand that prostitute is not something you can use to insult anyone anymore. Yeah, please grow up. And last, on hypergamy. Hypergamy is generally marrying for money, or rather dating for money, or rather being in a relationship where the setup is you're here to gain money, or rather you're here to gain a financial status that's comfortable. So here's one thing. It is controversial, but then we can have this conversation later on. Hypergamy, I feel like the African marriage is rooted under hypergamy, where this woman was supposed to, women were only married into families that were, or rather men who were able, who showed that they can provide, who showed that they have the wealth and they will maintain comfort for their women. So I think old school marriages are actually rooted in hypergamy. And what I keep telling people who want to go into hypergamy, because a lot of times it's sold to you, and a lot of, let me say, young girls think, oh yeah, that's the way to go. A lot of people actually confuse feminism with hypergamy. No, it's a whole new thing. Hypergamy is just you making sure you're climbing up that financial ladder, and it can happen with anyone, because even men right now are dating for like a better financial status. You can date a woman who's more established just to get yourself up there, right? So with hypergamy, you have to be smart because there's dynamics to it, just the same way. And I keep telling people that when it comes to hypergamy, you have to gauge. There's a dynamic. Are you coming in as the povo in this relationship, or are you coming in as at par, right? At par, I'm thinking royal families, influential families, usually they want to marry within themselves so that the wealth circulates within particular families and you don't taint the family with some povo energy. It could be that, but I feel people who come from that type of family understand that very well. The problem comes in with these people who come in from lack. They do not have, but they want people who have. So you need to understand that dynamic, because a lot of times I tell people, if let's say you're a girl who's dating a man who has money, or rather you're targeting men who have money know, they also know, both of you know that you're here for the money. And they are also willing, the person, the blesser, the sponsor, they're also willing to pay for your company and to have you in their lives. So both these people know they're in hypergamy, both of you know that you're here for the money. But here's the problem. Some people think that I'm going to tap into this money or financial status and see how I can get myself into those networks and build myself. That doesn't happen. When, if you're in a hypergamy setup, the person who's the blesser, the one who has the money, and the dynamic is that you're the povo and this other person has money, they only view you as the object of company. They buy you for their company. So don't expect this person to tap you into their networks. Don't expect this person to ever sit you down and think of you as a business partner and have a business chat. No. To them, you're just an object they're paying to have for company. So have that in your mind so that you don't end up frustrated. And that is something that the other girl said. When you're dealing with politicians, or rather people who have high influence, you have to be very careful of your security. Know your place. In most cases, when it comes to hypergamy, and the dynamic is that one person doesn't have and the other person has, is that you're to be seen and not to be heard. You're supposed to sit here and look pretty, dress up, play blonde. I'm not about to get from the office where I've been discussing multi-million dollar bills, multi-million dollar deals, and then I come home and I start talking to you about the state of political tension in the country. No. You are supposed to provide company. So just think of it that way. If for hypergamy, you have to be really smart. And I think some of the things that I see mistakes that people make in hypergamy, especially young girls, is to get invested emotionally and forget. If this relationship began on basis of hypergamy, basically one person has money, the other person is coming to gain from that money, you're not about to get lucky or get in the business leagues, or I don't know. You will get, the only way I feel like you can leverage on this is if you get money from, you do get money from them directly, then invest in your own things by yourself. But thinking that now you're going to be at par with this person and sit down and discuss business, that's not going to happen in hypergamy setups where one person is the povo. That only happens in hypergamy setups where both of you are just as influential and both of you have the same, something to lose that's quite valuable. So that's why I was talking about royal families and influential families. Last thing about hypergamy is that I am not a hypergamist. I tried to flirt with the idea. I don't seem to be. I think anything relationshipy, anything that makes me work a bit more, I do not have the time for it. I feel like I'm a very peaceful person. I've established a very peaceful life as a single woman. And for anything to interrupt that, it can only offer the same amount of peace, or it can only offer way more peace than I have right now. So peace and happiness is very key for me. And that is why probably everything on this list that we're discussing today is something I'm not even experiencing at the moment. And I don't feel like I even see it in the near future. I don't see myself having sex casually. I don't see myself marrying for money. I don't see myself getting into sex work by choice, because all of this just seems to be something that will require more of me, or will require more of my mental space, and that will take away from my peace. And I'm very keen about my peace. So for as long as I don't need to be in these situations, for as long as I'm not pushed into those situations, I don't think I would do so out of choice. Yeah. But anyway, those are my thoughts on sex work, and hypergamy. I didn't expect for it. When I was giving out the prompt in my head, I was just thinking sex work, hypergamy, same thing. But I didn't think that it was so layered. I didn't think that we'd go into such a layered conversation. And so I'm thinking also, when I start season 4, when we'll be having more guests on the podcast, I will start to do these topics again, but now with a wider variety of opinions and people who have different experiences. And we can get to talk to them, to talk about this from that level as well, and get like a wider perspective from different people. But for now, I am happy with the discussion that we had today. It was a lot. We are back with our long episodes again. Oh yeah, we are. But with that, I will close this episode and say thank you very much for being as supportive as you are. You are because I am. I be because you've been. I am so grateful. But that brings us to the end of another episode of the In All Honesty podcast. My fabulous name is Oliver Rao. Do have yourself a lovely week ahead. Bye.